So we created this new GitHub repository that I have mentioned is going to work as the remote of our local repository. So throughout this lecture, that is precisely what we're going to set up. We're going to set this as the remote and push everything so we can see all of that information directly from GitHub. And the process is going to be quite easy, and it is even described right here in the page that we see in the Code tab as soon as we create a new GitHub repository. And all we have to do is copy this URL that GitHub created for our repository. We can just click this button over here to copy it. You can see that it is confirmed by github.com/your GitHub username / and the name of your repository, and .git, which you may realize is also the name of the folder that gets created when we initialize a repository over on the terminal. But just with this URL on our clipboard, let me navigate back to the terminal. Let me just clear this out. And we are currently, of course, on our repository. But so far, if I do git remote -v to list my remotes, I see absolutely nothing. Because, of course, I don't have any remotes yet. What I can do to add the new GitHub repository as a remote is execute git remote add origin and pass the URL of that GitHub repository, the one that I have just copied. Now, the origin wording here is just a common practice, but this can be anything. This is just the name through which we are going to be identifying this particular remote. And again, origin is one that is commonly used, but you could set this to GitHub or whatever other thing that you can. Origin is just going to be the most common word that you use to set the GitHub remote here in the Git repository. So I can just execute this and execute git remote -v again, and you can see that indeed the origin has been set. And you see it listed twice because one is for fetching and one is for pushing, although to simplify things, this is just the exact same thing. We have that origin remote already set. That means that we can push directly to that remote. And to do it, we do it exactly as you would imagine. We execute git push. And you pass to which remote you want to push, in our case origin, and which branch you want to push. We can start with the dev branch. And this would work, but before you execute this, I want to mention another thing. If you execute this like this is, every single time that you make some changes to this branch, you would have to execute git push origin dev. Now that is not a lot of work, but there is a shorter version. And we can use that shorter version by just adding the U flag in here. This U flag means that the origin dev is going to be set as the upstream for this branch, meaning that the dev branch already knows that when you execute git push, it should push to this branch. Let me just execute this so it is a little bit clearer. If I execute this, of course, everything is going to be pushed over to GitHub. On GitHub, a new dev branch is also going to be created, and that dev branch is going to be the upstream to the local dev branch. If the upstream isn't set like it is being set right now, and you can double check that that is the case by seeing this small messaging here, that the dev set up to track remote branch. So this tracking is what I mean by upstream. Since that tracking is being set, the next time I have some available changes, all I have to do is write git push. I wouldn't have to specify origin dev again because dev already knows where to push. If I didn't set that upstream, I would have to manually type origin and dev, so dev knows where to push. But since right now, thanks to that U flag, it is already setting the upstream, tracking that dev branch, this would not be required. And now we can navigate over to GitHub and reload the page to see that all of that code is already here. the .vs folder, the Android project, the iOS, the .NET standard, the solution, all of that is in here, all of the code. And if we navigate to main page, we can see the event handler that we created. And if we open the SAML file, we can see the label and the entry and the button, all of the code is right here. And if we navigate back to code, we see that there is a dev branch in here. Now, let's push the other two branches. I will again use git push -u origin, and let's push master. Again, all of this code is going to be uploaded. A new branch, in this case the master branch, is created, as we see here, and then the master is set to track the remote branch master. Finally, I am going to execute the push u origin test. And as soon as this command is executed, I can navigate back to GitHub, reload my page, and see that the three branches are right here: dev, master, and test. So there you have it. This is exactly what you will have to do to send everything over to GitHub. Now your local repository has a remote, which is the origin, pointing to that remote GitHub repository, and all three branches with all of their code are now on GitHub as well. Of course, this means that all of the commits are here as well. Notice that from the code tab, I have, of course, the three branches that we can also see from here. But we also have these 5 commits tab, and we see all of the commits that have ever been executed. In this case, in the dev branch, but because they are all in the same page, we can see the exact same thing on either of these branches. And we can even navigate to this commit and see exactly what changed in that commit, line by line. For example, in this last commit, I changed the display alert or the messages that are being displayed. And you can see them exactly here, in which file the change was made, in which lines the change was made, and exactly what was changed. And you can even see the SHA of this commit, which is this long numbering here, and even its parent, the commit that was made before this one. And if we navigate to it, we can see that other commit. Some changes that were made by Visual Studio. This is not important. This is not important either. This one is the one that we made. The creation of the button, the creation of the event handler, and you can see all of them right here on GitHub. So perfect. Now we have everything here on GitHub. We can see the commits, we can see the branches. In the next lecture then, we are ready to start working with themes. Of course, it's really just going to be a quick test. I am going to be using a second GitHub account that I have for scenarios just like this one to see how you would work in Teams, which is going to help us set up a scenario where a pull request is necessary. This then is going to help us learn how pull requests work. And again, as I have been mentioning, pull requests are going to be the foundation of the entire CI/CD process.